Good morning and welcome to the fourth meeting of the Sunset Committee for the 2025-2026 interim. Will the secretary please call the roll?
Senator Daly.
Here.
Senator Lang. Senator Rogish. Assemblymember Hafen.
Here.
Assemblymember Kasama.
Here.
Assemblymember Orentlicker.
Here.
Assemblymember Roth. Chair Backus.
And I am present. We actually have all members present. We have Assemblymember Kasama sitting in today for Assemblymember O'Neill, so I thank her for appearing today with us. Before we begin, I would like to make several housekeeping announcements. The agenda items may be taken in a different order than listed. 2 or more items may be combined in consideration. An item may be removed or discussion of an item may be delayed at any time. Meeting materials can be accessed on the committee's webpage located on the Nevada Legislature's website. If you can also sign up for electronic notifications related to the committee's activities on the legislature's website as well. We will have a public comment period at the beginning and the end of the meeting. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Members of the public may provide testimony in different ways, all of which are listed on the agenda. Finally, I would like to remind members to please silence your electronic devices, especially cell phones and laptops during the meeting. With that, we will move on to public comment. I will start here. Before we start in Las Vegas, I would like to provide the call-in contact if anyone is watching on YouTube or on the legislature website. The telephone number for calling in for public comment today is 888-475-4499, and the meeting ID is 822-5487-8159. And again, we'll do public comment at the end of the meeting. With that, I'll go ahead and open up public comment here in Las Vegas. Anyone wishing to make public comment in Las Vegas, please make your way up to the front. Seeing no one, we'll move to Carson City. Is there anyone in Carson City wishing to make public comment this morning? Seeing no one, AVH, is there anyone on the telephone lines wishing to make public comment?
Thank you, Chair. Our public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers for public comment at this time.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move on to our next agenda item 3, the approval of the minutes from the meeting on February 6, 2026. I will accept a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting on February 6, 2026. Thank you. I have a first from Senator Lane, a second from Assemblymember Roth. Is there any discussion on the motion? With that, those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. The motion carries and the minutes are approved. Thank you. Next, we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 4. This is the time for public hearing concerning the termination, modification, consolidation, or continued operation of certain entities pursuant to NRS 232B.240. All the documents that have been supplied are on the committee's meeting page, including a document from staff providing background information in the legislative history for each entity. We have representatives from each entity joining us today to provide a brief overview and answer any questions. Today, we'll go ahead and take the items in order as they are set forth in the agenda, and we'll go ahead and start with agenda item 4A, which is the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of Control. We have presenters here in Las Vegas, so I welcome Pamela Sloan, President of the NIAA Board of Control, Timothy J. Jackson, Executive Director of NIAA, Kate Scroy, Assistant Director of NIAA, and Neil Rombardo, Legal Counsel, NIAA. I understand we only have 3 seats, so if there's a time and you need someone else to make their way up to the front, we understand. And with that, we always allow our boards to make opening remarks if you have any, and then we will dive into questions. So welcome.
Good morning.
Chairperson and members of the Sunset Committee. My name is Pamela Sloan, and I am the president of the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of Control. I appreciate the opportunity to explain why the NIAA is vital and self-sustaining organization that serves as a cornerstone of the educational experience in Nevada. As defined by NAC 385B.106 through 385B.116, the NIAA Board of Control serves as the primary policy-making and governing body for over 50,000 students across 124 member schools throughout the state. The Board of Control consists of 12 voting members representing 4 regions across our state based on student population. Additionally, the Board of Control, it includes 12 non-voting members. This ensures that every corner of Nevada has a vote in our athletic and activity programs. Voting members must be a school district board member, trustee, a superintendent, assistant or deputy superintendent, director of athletics within the school district, principal of a high school, or parent guardian of a student athlete involved in a sanctioned sport. Non-voting members represent leagues and associations that work closely with the NIAA. These individuals offer valuable input by gathering direct feedback from coaches and school personnel. The Board of Control is a policy-making and governing body of the association, and its duties are defined in NAC 385B.114 and are as follows. Responsible for making new regulation and or revising, deleting existing regulations, hiring of an employee and an executive director, setting their salary, defining their powers and duties, providing an office and equipment for conducting business, adopting an annual budget and establishing dues for membership, assigning each member school to a classification and league, providing for the organization, supervision, and certification of sports officials, controlling all sanctioned activities in which member schools participate, and authorizing the executive director to investigate violations of rules and regulations. The Board of Control conducts 4 meetings each year in the fall, winter, spring, and summer, alternating locations between north and south. In conclusion, the NIAA Board of Control is dedicated to promoting transparency and excellence. As a governing body for high school sports and activities in Nevada, the NIAA places great emphasis on student well-being and safety, upholding educational values, ensuring fair competition, and fostering academic excellence. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Tim Jackson, Executive Director of the NIAA.
Good morning. I'm here to answer any questions you have pertaining to the NIAA and provide any clarity that you require.
Thank you so much. Did our third guest want to make an introduction? You're good. Just when we ask questions, if someone's going to answer them, and sometimes you all may bounce back and forth, it's kind of not natural, but we would just ask that you state your name just so that it makes it easier for those preparing our minutes to know who's responding to our inquiries. With that, I am going to, I'll look around. Does anyone have any questions? I'll start with Senator Lang.
Thank you. My background is I'm a former phys ed teacher at Durango High School, so very involved in athletics my whole life, played sports. I just want to talk about a couple things that have been in the news in the last year, and one of them is Bishop Gorman football. And I know it was a big thing, and schools didn't want to play them because they have a very elite program. And I just would like to hear from you, other than just reading what I read in the paper, about kind of what the situation was there, how you arrived at the decision you arrived at. Because the reason it concerns me is that you have a lot of travel teams with coaches that coach in the schools that recruit those kids to come to their schools, which makes them an elite program as well. And so I just, I really truly feel bad for the students who work really hard to participate in interscholastic activities in our state, that now other schools don't want to play them because they feel like they're always going to lose. So if you could kind of fill me in on that a little bit so I can have a better understanding.
Tim Jackson for the record. That's a very good question. And as a former Durango employee myself, ironic, isn't it? Small world. I think that question needs to be answered on multiple levels. First and foremost, the NIAA did not make the determination that the CCSD schools were going to go independent, which is what they chose to do. That is a status that is available under our regulations for them to do that. They're still members in good standing within our association. The decision there was made based on their assessment of their athletic program in football and their belief, and I will say it is a belief, it is not a fact, that they are being out-recruited by a member school. All allegations of recruiting are investigated and are regulated by our association. Bishop Gorman High School is a member in good standing. We have no allegation that we can substantiate of any active recruiting, and they are all investigated. I will tell you that the historical significance of this decision goes back many, many years to when a decision was made by CCSD to only play Bishop Gorman High School in league competition. That was years ago, I would say 20. That decision pushed Bishop Gorman's football program into a decision where they either had to not play games or find teams to play that were no longer located in Clark County. That began their journey where they began playing teams from out of state. Apologize, I have dry mouth this morning. And as a result, they experienced, I would love some water. Thank you. I should have brought a bottle myself. I appreciate that, Senator. What they did was they sought out competition out of state, and they experienced success in those games. Bishop Gorman is not alone in their standing within our state as a dominant program. Thank you very much. There are other programs that are just as dominant. If you look at girls basketball, Centennial High School has won numerous state titles. Coronado Golf, dominant. Palo Verde Swimming. Coronado Swimming just won its 5th consecutive state title. I think the issue you see here is football is a very media savvy sport. It is in the media. There are teams across our state that are dominant in many, many sports. But the publicity behind football has driven this decision, I believe, for the state of Nevada and for the Clark County School District. Also, it should be noted that most of the schools that have chosen to go independent are not only not in the league, they're not even in the division that Gorman plays. There is no possibility they would play that team. So to say they would have no opportunity for success against one entity is kind of misguided. They don't even play. So I think that those things are out there. The other issue is this. I don't believe everything I read in the media, and I can attest that there were a lot of comments made by a lot of individuals that are not factual. Contact us. We'll tell you what's going on. We'll tell you where the NIA stands on this. Like I started out, CCSD is still a member in good standing across the board. There's no problem with their programs. What they're utilizing has been a category that has existed for many schools that are going through developmental changes, growth, or loss of student population. So I know that's kind of a vague answer, but I can get into more details if you'd like.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask another? So my other question is about the NAIA and what kinds of training do you provide for coaches? There's been allegations of abuse, shall we say, or inappropriate behavior. There's a court case in the courts right now. How do you address that as an organization?
Tim Jackson for the record. I don't believe we provide enough. I'm going to be very frank and very honest. We provide a lot of educational opportunities for administrators and athletic directors. We are not into the coaches' ranks as much as I believe we should be. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. One is the sheer volume of individuals that we would need to be in contact with, it is better suited for the schools to provide their own education for the coaches. We do require some background information, CPR, AED, coaches clearance. We provide some tertiary educational opportunities. We strive to provide opportunities for our schools to provide opportunity for education for their coaches, but we don't have the capacity to get to the coaches the way we should. We rely on the schools and the school districts to coach up their coaches. But there are programs out there that we strive to use. The NIAAA, not NIAA, NIAAA is the National Association for Athletic Administrators and Athletic Directors. They provide coaches education through a platform of national training. The NFHS, the National Federation of High School Athletics, provides coaches trainings. And then we have an organization that we work very closely with in our office called NADA, N-A-D-A, Nevada Athletic Directors Association, where we provide as much education as we can there. We have increased our educational opportunities. We have increased our educational awareness, and we've provided our schools and our districts a platform, if you will, a library of educational tools. We have also implemented what we call the summer institutes, which are free to our schools, that provide them the tools to run an effective athletic program, which involves your coaches. At the end, the coaches are not our employees, they are the district employees, but we need to help them and foster that and grow that. That is a definite area that I've strived to do in my short tenure of 2 years. I believe the educational component that we provide at the NIAA is insufficient, but we need to be able to provide that in a manner that meets those needs. Coaches and coaches' behaviors are a direct reflection on our schools. The direct reflection then comes back on the NIAA. We need to make it better.
So thank you. And just as a follow-up to that, so am I hearing you correctly that there is currently no regulation as to you have to have a certain amount of hours in certain classes that coaches have to take in order to maintain their status as coach? Is there any of that, or is it up to the school districts?
There is a minimal amount for us. Tim Jackson, for the record, apologize. You have to have your AED and CPR certification. You have to take your coach's education, and you have to take concussion management. Those are the required.
Kate Segray for the record. So the 4 requirements are first aid, CPR, which is every 2 years, concussion, they have to do every 3 years, and then fundamentals of coaching is a one-time course that they have to take.
Tim Jackson, also for the record. And then if a coach is ejected from a game, there is a required educational component they take there as well, of course, to the NFHS.
Okay, thank you so much.
Members, I'll start with Assemblymember Kasama.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit more, kind of following on my colleagues' questions here. As far as the, you're collecting money from all the school districts, yet my understanding is, for example, Bishop Gorman is one that is charging to use the facilities. And so how do you pick where the games are played, and is that unfair when the other schools aren't doing that?
Tim Jackson for the record. First, Bishop Gorman doesn't charge us to use their facilities.
They don't.
They do not. We are charged to use facilities through Facilitron, through CCSD, which is for their security, and the hall monitors and custodial. And I will tell you that is a substantial amount of money each season.
So every school where you play has a certain charge, is that correct?
Not every school. Only certain schools do charge us. We play at many schools for free. They do not charge us for the use of their facility. Bishop Gorman is one of them. Examples of when they would charge us outside of a rental fee, and I'm using the term rental fee because that would be the cost for the security, the CSMs, custodial, and any wear and tear that they charge us for on that, would be a situation where we have a heated rivalry and a district says, Tim, can we have some extra security? Absolutely, we'll pay for that. Don't worry about it, we've got it. Or if we need some additional custodial, we'll pick up that. Those are far and few between. I will tell you, we are running into a price situation where we're being priced out of venues. That is a very big question our parents ask us often. Allegiant Stadium is absolutely gorgeous, and we play state football there, and we play state flag football there. The cost to the association for the use of that facility is completely picked up for by the Raiders. We do not pay for that. They open their doors. The only people we pay for in those situations is we bring in our own announcer, and we pay for our announcer or any staffing requirements we would have. They pay the entire bill. We do not see a bill from the stadium. That is not the case. We used UNLV this past weekend for swimming state. We used Pavilion Pool up by Palo Verde High School for swimming. We are paying rental fees that are very, very expensive for those facilities. We had parents reach out and ask us why we were not playing baseball at CSN and UNLV. We were not able to secure those venues 6 months ago when we were trying to secure the venue for the state championship because they were unavailable at the time. But there are other times we're priced out. It's very expensive to secure those facilities. We do not work on a very large budget, and I'll be glad to go over the budget with you at any time. But that's the case we're reaching. We are running into, we can't afford to go play our games. And with the costs that we're experiencing now with some of our public school facilities, we're getting priced out there as well. We have had almost $120,000 in security, custodial, and other fees beyond what we have to pay for officials and medals and awards and the other things that go into running a state championship. It's getting very expensive. We're very thankful for schools like Bishop Gorman that allow us to use their facility for free, and many of our other school districts across the state that do the same thing. Most of them view it as, we're already playing our games, we're already picking up this cost, we're not going to pass the cost back off onto the NIAA. And some school districts are in that situation where they must. And we don't begrudge them. We understand the cost to do business. But at the same time, we're having to look at our costs, and we're spreading ourselves very thin. We had 5 divisions of baseball and softball. So in essence, 10. We were at Faith Lutheran High School, Las Vegas High School, Sierra Vista High School, Needles High School, Spanish Springs High School, and I'm missing one because we had an odd number. But we were all over the place playing baseball and softball because we cannot afford to secure a single venue that can meet our needs for our state championship just in baseball.
Do you receive any state funding?
No, ma'am, we receive 0 state funding. Our funding, we have 3 funding streams. We have we have school dues. Our schools pay a due. It is a flat rate for schools under 650. It's $1,400. And then for schools at 651 and above, it is $4 per student. Generates around $550,000 a year. We have our partnership agreements, so sponsorship, that generates around $280,000 a year, give or take. Sometimes it's a little higher, never lower. We're very fortunate there. And then our gate receipts for our state championship games at the venues that we host. Our general operating budget runs just shy, sort of north of $2 million. And then we pay our bills out of that. But that's the only funding we receive. Sure.
We'll go to Assemblymember Haven.
Thank you, Chair. And I do have a few questions. Just cut me off whenever you want me to stop asking them. But first of all, Mr. Jackson, I just want to say thank you for some of the history lessons. I 25 years ago graduated from Bishop Gorman, and I remember us not being very good in football, at least. I think that we hadn't won a state championship since the 80s, probably before I was born, prior to the changes with the Clark County School District in 20 years ago. So I just want to say thank you for that, because I do know that did take place and that we were not very good. The other thing I wanted to mention on that is that I also remember our football games. We didn't have a football stadium at that time. We played at Valley High School, and I don't believe that Valley charged us for that. You'd have to go back 25 years and look, but to me, that was a good experience. It was fun. And I'm kind of disappointed to hear that now the school districts are charging for that, for the NIAA for state championships. It's also my understanding that they won't let the charter schools, and charters are now having to rent parks and facilities and running into the same issues that you are. And so kind of disappointed that we don't come together as a community and share our facilities. They're all taxpayer funded facilities. And I wish that we could get back to that. So my question on that is there a way through the NIAA to create regulations to try to address that? So you're not having to pay rental fees to the schools if they want to participate in the state championship or in the playoffs, that they have to let you use their facilities if they have home field advantage. And so that's my question to you is, can that be done through regs under current statute, or are there statutory changes that need to be made to try to address that?
Tim Jackson for the record. Currently, most of our leagues in the postseason do play at the higher seed site. And so they do have that understanding that they're going to host. As far as a regulation for them to provide that for us free of charge, there is no regulation that says they have to do that. There also is no regulation that says they have to charge. I don't know what we would get as far as pushback on that, because they do have their costs that they need to recoup. And we are the guest on their site. I understand that. Look, I get that when we host our event there, we are putting a strain on their facility. We understand that. And they have to pay their personnel as well. I don't know if the regulatory way is to do it. I think that what you said earlier about us working together, when I took over this job, there was a divide north to south, whether it was real or perceived. My goal has always been to try to bridge that gap, to bridge the north and the south, that we look at this as what's the best for the students of Nevada and not what's the best for the students in the south or the north or in our rural areas. Unfortunately, I think that gap is getting wider and not getting narrower. And I think we need to work on bridging that. And I think this is one of those things that we need to look at. One of the complaints we often hear is, well, you have teams that are playing games in the park and there's no security at that park. Well, why are they playing the games at the park? Is because we can't get onto the facility. They can't get onto the facilities. So I don't know that's going to be exacerbated or eased if we regulate it in that manner. I think they need to get together. They need to look at, these are our kids. I hear the comment too many times, well, it's not good for kids. It's not good for kids. Well, these adult issues are not good for kids. We're using kids as pawns for a political game of, I don't want to lose or I need to win. And that's not right. And it's very frustrating. So if we were to have a regulation, I think it would have to be very well crafted, because I think one of the issues we're going to run into is we still need security. And what I don't want to get to a point is districts are financially strapped. We understand that it's a tough time right now. We can't host him. We can't afford it. Now you're punishing your kids for this issue as well. Right now, we're making do. We're covering it, but it's getting more and more difficult. It's getting more and more expensive. But at the same time, I don't know if regulation is the way to go on that matter.
And thank you for that. Just you said that there's no regulation that would prevent them from charging, but there's also nothing that allows them to charge. And if there's nothing allowing them to charge, I'm curious how they're getting around that and charging. The other thing on that is the cost of security. My understanding is there's the Clark County School District Police. I would just assume that that's part of their job duties when it is a Clark County School District facility, but I don't know enough about that. And I'm sure you don't have the answer on the authority for them to charge, but maybe you could bring that back. The other question that I wanted to kind of touch on is a situation that took place that was brought to my attention recently in Fallon, where we recently implemented the lacrosse as a sanctioned sport. And there's one student that in Fallon, the school district doesn't have lacrosse, but the charter does. That student has been playing at the charter. Now there's concerns that next season that student most likely will not be allowed to participate. I was hoping maybe you could give me a little bit more background information Hopefully there's a way to ensure that student can participate as we try to, at least in this transition period, moving to the sanctioned sport, so that the last thing I think any of us want is for students not to be able to participate in sports that they have been for the last 3 years.
I'm going, Tim Jackson for the record, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Segroy, Assistant Director. She handles regulation, and she can walk you through the regulation that we're dealing with, and we are aware of the situation.
Kate Segroy for the record. So in general, regulation NEC 385B.706 requires that a student attend the school in which they wish to participate in. We have some exceptions to our regulations involving students that, for instance, attend a charter school. If that charter school does not offer the sport, then they can participate at their locally zoned district public high school. We don't have the reverse in this situation, and it's actually been brought up at our Board of Control, and some member schools have basically, our public schools have said, you know, I don't offer bowling at my school, but my students at my public school can't go anywhere else to do bowling. And this was more of the argument to not allow charter students to be able to play at public schools. So there's been some pushback actually on that end, but what we're talking about is the reverse. And so we currently don't have a regulation that would allow a public school student to go anywhere else to participate in a sport that's not offered at that school, unless they are attending a school that has 30 or fewer students, and that's per NRS. 385B.065, I believe it is, that was passed, I think, about 10 years or so ago. So they have to have a very small school to allow them to participate anywhere else if they're at a public school. So those are the regulations that are at play here. So there's really no exception through our regulations to allow those students to participate. And we understand, obviously, with it having been club prior, that students were participating from different schools on the club programs. And now that it's fully sanctioned, now they're under our regulations. So this is a bit of a change for them, and where, you know, if a student that the school is not going to be offering that sport, that would not be able to play on a high school team versus when they were able to play for the club program.
Thank you for that. And just follow up, Chair, on that. Again, I'm going back 25 years in my memory, so apologize. I just remember when I was in high school, I had friends that went to Las Vegas Academy, right? They didn't have a football team, so they were able to play on, I believe he played for Valley High School, actually, at the time. And so is that still the case with the magnet schools? So the magnet schools can still go and participate that way?
Yeah, so currently any school that doesn't offer sports at all, that's a public school, so a public magnet program, or a charter school, public charter school, always has that ability to participate at their locally zoned school. Private schools do not, unless, again, they're under the 30 threshold.
Okay. And then I would just encourage you guys to look at the regulations to try to fix this situation in Fallon. And then my last question, Chair, if just because I don't know the makeup of the board, but in regards to the charter school situation here, does a charter actually have a seat on the board or no?
Tim Jackson for the record. Currently, no, they do not. Our current makeup of the board is 12 members, 3 of which are parents. The 3 parents come from 3 distinct regions. One is Clark County, the other is Washoe, and the third is a conglomerate of our rural counties. They pick the 3rd parent. Then the remaining 5, that leaves 9 seats, excuse me. 5 seats are at the behest of Clark County School District. They have 5. Washoe has 2, and then the rural counties have 1 each as they're grouped together, which is in our regulations. Which regulation is that, Mr. Gray? Okay, 212.
Kate Segroy for the record. It is 112, I believe, or 106, 108, go over the voting and non-voting members.
And those are our 12 voting members. So currently the private schools and the charter schools do not have a voting seat.
And I know we get to make recommendations from the Sunset Committee at the end of this, but 12 seems like an even number, and an odd number would be good. Maybe throw in the charters or the privates to make try to split the tie in the event there is one. So just throw that out for food for thought. And Chair, I want to thank you for allowing me the time this morning.
Absolutely. I may piggyback on Assemblymember Haven's question just because it's kind of, I have a follow-up with that. I thought at the beginning of the introduction remarks that Ms. Sloan had indicated that the seats were proportional to student pop. Maybe they were that way. I don't know how many years ago, but I pulled up what our student populations were for these different categories. And I kind of grouped them together. I'm not sure about the public schools because I did just a generic Google search on that. And that was about 22,000 students. But then there's this quasi situation where I don't know if it goes from private schools, but I know for our charter schools, if you're going to a charter school that doesn't have a sport, like one of my girlfriend's children swam for one of our public schools because that's the school she would have been zoned for. So the charter schools are actually our second largest school district in our state, making up about 70,000 student population. Clark County is right under 300,000. I call it our northwest counties make up about 15,000. All other rules is about 30,000. And Washoe at 63,000. And definitely the makeup of the board, I don't think is proportional to student population. But do you have any idea whether it's proportional maybe to student athlete population?
It is, Tim Jackson for the record, it is not by participation. If it were, I think we would be in a situation that would be rather unique, because I can tell you that we know a Moapa Valley High School percentage of students participating in athletics is far higher than some of our largest high schools in the Clark County School District, just because the number of kids they have. We go to a school like Lund, you may be looking at almost every kid in your school as an athlete just to field your teams. So I think that, we've had this discussion before internally and with the board. We've started the discussions on this. We live in a bicameral country. We have the House of Representatives, which is by population, and we have the Senate, which is by state. I'm a firm believer in the NIAA being represented in a Senate matter, because we are not saying one school is more important than another school simply because of the number of students who attend it. If you're densely populated, you're going to have more density of students. I believe that we need to look at that very, very, very well and very deeply, because first of all, I don't like 12. I agree. I'm an odd number guy. It breaks ties. I would have loved to have a 13th vote or just an 11th vote. I think once we get past 12, our board may be getting too large for what we do. So if you're asking me whether I think we're representative of our members, I do not. I do not think we need to have the voice of our charter schools. They are the second largest district in our state now. Our private schools members are now making up 16% of our 129 members. Our largest member is Clark County with 38, but that's 29.45, 29.5, 30% of our schools, and they right now have 6 of the 12 votes. So I think that's a discussion that needs to be had.
If there's any way, do you guys have like a spreadsheet that shows us kind of two different things? One, where the member schools are located, and basically, and then also looking at the number of student athletes. And this may be a little complicated because I'm kind of curious, like even with our charter schools, of those charter schools that may like flow into one of the public school districts. I don't know if you have that information, but I think probably members on our committee would like to see that, knowing what the makeup is. And probably the makeup was done years ago when charter schools were not as big in our state, as well as private schools. I remember, I'm just like my colleague, Assemblymember Hafen, but I'm probably 35 years out from going to a public school when Gorman was doing quite well in sports. I think at the time their sport of choice was basketball. And I know some of the other public schools gave a run for the money, but maybe that's why the regs had come into play shortly after that. With that, I will go to Assemblymember Roth for some questions.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few questions. So in 2022, the Nevada Legislature, we passed in Nevada the Equal Rights Amendment, and it's the most expansive amendment that we've seen in this country. And part of that amendment protects individuals on the basis of gender identity. Now, in 2025, it's my understanding that your organization or your body overturned a decades-long policy which allowed transgender athletes to participate in sports in the state of Nevada. So a few questions specifically on how that came about. Can you tell me what, if any, government agencies or representatives you worked with to come up with the language for that?
Tim Jackson, for the record. The board addressed that issue last April on the tails of the president's executive order. There was ample discussion amongst the board. There was some discussion with some outside entities and some other groups that provided input. They did not make the final determination that was made by the board. I cannot tell you the name right now off the top of my head. I apologize. I cannot remember the name of one of the groups that they talked to, but they did talk to a few other groups out there. The decision to move in that direction, I think it's very important to understand that transgender students were not told they were not permitted to participate. The decision and the policy that was implemented was that they participated in their gender at birth. And that was the change. That came in alignment with the executive order. And it has been in place now for over a year, and it was a change. I don't disagree that it was a change. We do not track the gender identity of students. We do not track that, nor should we. The identity of the students is never divulged, and the protocols in which this policy was amended was correctly done, public forum with a vote of the board. It is a policy, and I am on the record having said whether I agree or disagree with it. The President of the United States made an executive order. We follow the rule of law, and that's where we stand on that. I can provide you any other information you'd like, but I don't have that with me at my hands.
They have a few follow-ups, Chair. So I have the privilege of being a constitutional lawyer, and one of those things I've learned is that we focus first on what the Constitution says. Now, the Constitution of the state of Nevada protects students based on their gender identity. That is in direct conflict with the executive order that was issued by Donald Trump. My concern is that whether or not there have been any state agencies or individuals representing the state of Nevada who participated in drafting this language. And what I'm hearing is that there are no state agencies, for example, or offices such as the Lieutenant Governor's office who participated in moving this policy forward.
I can tell you I did not work with the Lieutenant Governor's office. The group that was with us at that time, thank Ms. Segoy for this, was called Icons. I do not believe he is a part of that group. If he is, I was not aware of that. No, I was gonna say that there was no, I know he testified before our, he made public comment before a couple of our meetings. And, but there were other students and other parents that made public comment. I'm going through the last couple of meetings before the April decision was made, but we did not work with, nor did I work with, or anybody on my staff work with the Lieutenant Governor's office.
Okay, and then so the previous policy was put in place in 2016. So it was in place from 2016 to 2025, which allowed students to participate in the sport as the gender in which they identified. How many injuries occurred during that time that was a direct result of a student participating as a gender in which they expressed?
We don't track that. We would not have that information. I don't have the, we do not track who injured who.
Okay. And you are aware that the ACLU and other organizations have found and that this change is blatantly unconstitutional?
I cannot say that I have, but I am telling you that from our standpoint, we followed the directive of the executive order.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We'll go next to Assemblymember Orlichter.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. As you mentioned, you are fiscally, in a sense, self-sustaining. No state dollars, it's sponsorships, dues, and ticket sales. And so, and you've also talked about the economic pressures on the schools, and that's what's led to these rental fees and other problems where they hold their games. And I'm wondering if you can speak to the extent to which these financial pressures end up diverting funds. You know, the schools have to come up, the school districts, the schools, to cover their costs for athletics. What are they sacrificing? Does this mean there's less music and arts, or do you know how what kind of cost shifting is going on?
Tim Jackson for the record. I can't address it on a district level. I can tell you that I've heard clearly from the superintendents that the travel budgets are starting to impact their abilities to meet their budgetary needs. I don't have any firsthand knowledge that they're having to cut programs to sustain athletics. But I do know that they are feeling that pinch as well because of the cost associated with traveling for state competitions. As a former assistant principal over athletics at a high school for many, many years, I can tell you that the per diem rates for traveling with our students is starting to impact their budgets. I can tell you that the time away from class impacts schools greatly. When we do not have centralized venues where we can get kids to and from, they're out of school way too much. Some of them are traveling Thursday, Friday. Some of them are traveling Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on a shortened week as it is. And I know those impact budgets as well. But I cannot give you any direct correlation between a music program being cut and a football team being funded.
And thank you for that, Mr. Jackson. I think it's really interesting when I think in Clark County, we don't really appreciate what our rural counties go through for travel. And I remember I was up at the Oahe Combined School, and one of my friend's kids was playing volleyball. And I feel like they had to they were traveling to Ely or something to play a game. And that is like a very, very long drive. And I don't think people appreciate that a lot of our students that may not be in the Clark County or the Washoe school districts, or even in our wonderful Northwest rural area, the amount of travel that is required. And so that visual always kind of is something we got to continue to think about for other athletes throughout our state. And those budgets are probably a little more difficult when you have fewer students within your school district. So thank you for kind of reminding us of that. With that, I'll go ahead up to Senator Daly, who has some questions for you from Carson City.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I know there's been several issues discussed, but I wanted to go back just real quick to the charging for the facilities and those types of things. Now, I understand during the regular season that there isn't charges for that. It's mainly for playoffs and championships and those types of events after the regular season.
Tim Jackson for the record. Yes, that is correct. We do not regulate. We don't facilitate or regulate the regular season contests. Those are at the schools. They conduct those in their own manner. We are the postseason, so we do postseason only, and that's where the costs come in. So what occurs during the regular season is borne out by the school districts themselves.
Understood. And I just wanted to be clear on that. That's what I was understanding from reading and from what the conversation was today. So separate question along that line, and I know different events are different. You talked about, football getting the public attention. I'm sure some of the programs for basketball, baseball, the major sports. On those championship type things, is there a gate? Is there a ticket cost to get into those events? Who administers that and who gets to keep the gate? Is it the venue or is it the NIAA, or could that be an offset if the school is keeping the gate and charging? And I don't know how much it would be, probably less for some other smaller sports.
Thank you, Tim Jackson for the record. The gate is the one of the three sources of revenue we have. If we were to give that up, we would we would be in very, very bad shape. We do charge a gate at all events except for a very select few. We do not charge for cross country because it is usually held in a park and it becomes very cumbersome to try to figure out where we're going to stop people from coming into a park. We have looked at that. We do not charge for bowling. However, we are charged to use the bowling alleys. We have not yet charged at bowling. Those are not venues that we readily have access to charge at. There are some venues that we have trouble charging when we go there. For example, if a venue has a ticketing agreement with an entity that is outside of our ticketing agreement, we may not be able to use that entity. We worked with a venue in Nevada where they had a ticketing deal that regardless of what we charged, they were going to put $4 on top of every ticket sold. Our student athletes or our students that come to games only pay $5. So we would only be making $1 for the sale. We couldn't afford that. And we didn't want to put $4 on top of that charge for a single game event, making it a $9 entry for a student. So we run into situations like that. We hire people to take the tickets at the games. Usually they're the staff at the venue. The school will hire them out. We pay them an hourly wage. The schools tell us what to pay and we pay that amount. Some schools do not charge us for that. Some schools just say, nope, you know what? Part of doing business, we'll do it for free. And they don't send us a bill for that. But if we were to lose our ticket sales, the NIAA would be in a very, very bad financial situation. We're looking at about $1.3 million probably this year in ticket sales. And that is over half of our operating budget at $2 million. So we could not afford to lose those. We don't charge an exorbitant price. It's $12 for adults, $5 for students. We are in line with all of our neighbors here on the West Coast. California, it might be a little bit higher, but Arizona, Washington, Utah, they're right around that same amount. And in some cases, you're getting multiple events for the price of one. You go to a baseball game, you may see 3 baseball games for the price of 1. Now, we do have a higher ticket price for when we go to Allegiant Stadium for football. It's 4 games. The reason we do that is part of the agreement is the Raider Youth Foundation, which supports youth across our state with shoes, gear, helmets, equipment, gets $2 for every ticket we sell. And so we raise the price of our ticket for that with the donation going directly back to the Raiders Youth Foundation, because we know that means dollar for dollar, it's going right back to our kids. And to me, that's a good investment in our future. But as far as not selling tickets or giving the ticket sales to the schools, that would be a financial demise to the NIAA.
And thank you for that explanation. And that's where I wasn't, based on the discussion we had of the charging the schools, I didn't know who, or at least it wasn't clear who was taking the gate, if you will. So I was just curious if schools were charging a fee to use the facility and they also got the gates, but you're saying that's not the case. So I understand that a little more clearly, and it's an issue that I'm not sure. We need to think of a way to help solve that on a variety of levels, but I haven't got a clear idea just yet. Going back to one of the previous discussions on the board, and I understand your analogy, House of Representatives versus the Senate makeup, and it seems to me that the Senate makeup is going to make a little more sense. I agree with you there. Having 12, and you mentioned not going to 13, maybe going back down to 11, it seems to me when I look at the makeup of the voting members, and not necessarily the makeup, just the numbers, and then the non-voting members, I mean, you're at 25 people. That seems a little unwielding to me, and everybody's got their little different interest and areas of concern, and they're trying to influence things to their favor rather than looking at the overall purpose of the NIAA and going forward that way. Do you think the board, voting, non-voting, needs to be reviewed and looked at and overhauled a little bit to get everybody's focus back on to the primary reasons we have this and what those objectives are, rather than when I look at all these non-voting members coming from all of the different contingencies, if you will, seems to me that that purpose gets clouded.
Tim Jackson, for the record, I'd say clouded is a very generous term for what it becomes. To say the board is too big is an understatement. It's entirely too big. That's probably not going to be very popular with my board when I leave this meeting, that I just said that publicly in this hearing, and I'm okay with that. Because here's where I have a problem. We need to check our hat at the door. We are a board of control for the students of the NIAA. We are not a board of control for any individual entity within the NIAA. That change in mentality or that change of thinking is very difficult. And I think that's what's happened is we've become fractured and factioned. I hear too many times, I have to remember where I came from. You came from Nevada. You came from the state of Nevada. You were put on this board for that purpose. And I think that has been lost. I think we also need to have a board training so that we can get back to what the purpose of the board is. What is your role as a board member? What are your goals and objectives? And what are we trying to accomplish? Because too much of it has become, I have to vote this way or I have to vote that way because of where I come from, instead of looking at it for the entirety of the state. It's not a very popular opinion, and I'm sure I'll hear about it later, but I stand by it and I still believe it. I applied for this job on the basis that I was going to be accused of being a Southern guy. And I would do everything in my power to break that mold, that I was a Nevada guy. And I want to be that Nevada guy. But I also need a board that needs to be the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association. And there is no district identified in those 4 letters. No high school, no county, nothing. It says Nevada. And we need to get there. And I don't know if we're there right now. We are looking at, as a staff, we're looking at trying to have some board governance training going into the new year because I believe we need it. I think there's a good proponent or a good proportion of our board members that would agree with that. We're going to have some change on our board. Some people term out and some people are being replaced. I think the time is right for that. But I do believe the makeup of our board and our non-voting liaisons has become too cumbersome and too large.
And clouded, maybe I was trying to be generous. I didn't want to accuse anybody of only looking after their own self-interest by and through this board. So, but I do think the main purpose, and I agree with the what you said, it is the Nevada NIAA, Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association. And we should look at it from that and then look at what the purposes are and not regionalize. And then when I look at your 13, I think, non-voting members and the different interests there on that. So yeah, I think that needs to be looked at, and I'll be back to that in just a minute. A couple more questions if I can. More technical questions. I believe it's on the first document, item 4A1 on page 3, where it says the board may, and I would like a little more explanation or understanding, and I looked at and read the rules that you're listing there, where it says you may amend any regulation adopted by the NIA in the manner prescribed in 385B.142. When I looked at that, I think it refers back to the 233B language, but to me that language seems to be contradictory to what the normal process is for amending in a regulation, and I always get cautious about the adoption of regulations, the process that regulations get adopted under, and then always cautious about how those amendments get changed or amended. I believe they have to come back through the Legislative Commission, and I just looked at that and kind of said, how can you adopt regulations outside of 233B was news to me.
I'm going to turn this over to Assistant Director Segroy.
Kate Segroy for the record. Thank you for the question, Senator Daley. You're correct that we do follow all Chapter 233, all the the requirements for regulation changes. A change can come to us through a member school, can come through our Board of Control, through the superintendents. Those changes go to a committee that we have to discuss, and then we make suggestions to the board, and then I will present from the point of the committee those regulations to the Board of Control, and we follow all posting as far as workshops, hearings, timelines for all of that. All the public libraries get those that information. We take public comment at those workshops and hearings. The Board of Control then makes decisions on whether or not to move forward. I will then work with the LCB for the legislative writing of those regulations and that back and forth until it gets returned back to the board. Again, then for a decision on moving forward with the regulation. So we go through that entire process. And then at the end, once the board has finalized the language, it comes to the legislative commission hearing for final approval. There are no changes to regulations that go outside of that process.
Understood. Thank you. So it's more of a process where you can receive suggestions to make amendments to regulations. You have a committee that then will say, hey, we like this, we don't like that. But then you have to go through the notice, workshop, hearing, adoption, and then you got to send it on to LCB to go through the legislative commission. So I think I understand that. When I read that, I just wasn't, that's why I asked for a little additional explanation. But that, I think, was answered. And then in the next document in 4.2a, I think it's the question 15. When I was looking at the duties of the board's commission or entity, you have NRS 385B.0501, and then you say NRS 385B.114. I couldn't find that. Is that supposed to be NAC, which gives you the other duties of the board, commissions, or entities?
Yes, the second is NEC 385B.114. That's our regulation within.
So that should read NAC rather than NRS in that particular spot.
Kate's great for the record, yes.
Okay, that's what I was suspecting, but wasn't exactly sure. So then, the last one I told you I would come back to the board makeup and various things if I can, Madam Chair. I think this is my last one. So I read section 27 where you guys go through pretty lengthy and details on some possible recommendations or issues, I suppose. And then when you get to section 28, it says recommended statutory changes necessary to carry out objectives and programs. You say see above, which I'm assuming is 27. But there's nothing specific in there when I read all of section 27 that you're saying, hey, we'd like to see this, we'd like to see that. I think you describe some issues or experiences, but I didn't see a specific ask. And I was just curious, what, if anything, do you have? I mean, if you've got some ideas on the makeup of the board to get that Senate style and get it more focused on the actual purposes and duties of the NIAA, I'd love to hear what you guys are closest to it, what that recommendation is. And I understand you've got board members that you got to worry about and various things, but you know, the legislature doesn't have that same worry. We want to know what's going to be best for the state and the students. I think I speak for everybody on our committee, but.
Tim Jackson for the record. I think the board is too big. I think that right now we're too large for what we have in place. I think I want to remove the liaison factor from that. Take those positions and just push those to the side, because I do believe that they serve a purpose that is very important. But I think we need to look at the voting members and the representation that they have right now. The 3 parents are set into statute, so those 3 are in my estimation, are locked. Those are the 3. I will tell you that we have been very, very fortunate over the course of the years with the parents. I think we've been very beneficial from the parents being on our board. They've been very productive and very good members and are able to check their hat at the door, to turn a phrase again. I think what we need to look at, Senator, is we need to look at who we are representing and make decisions of what the board makeup would be based on those percentages. As I've stated before, I believe that we look at it from the system of the representation of our charter schools needs to have a voice. They need to have a vote. Our private schools need to have a vote. So that is 2 seats right there of the 12 that need to be changed in one way or another. Where do those changes come from? I think you need to look at the public school representation on the board. Right now, the two identified districts are Washoe and Clark that are, minus the parents, are 7 seats. Do they make up over 1/2 of our schools? I do not believe they do. So I believe we need to look at those numbers and say, should we adjust them one way or the other? And I don't want to sit down and say it needs to be 4 for Clark County, it needs to be 2 for Washoe County, it needs to be 1. I think we need to have a conversation. I think the board needs to look at this and say to themselves, are we willing to change? And change from within is always the best. And I think that's a scary topic for some people. The board makeup, minus the parents, was established when the NIA was formed. It never changed. It's always been that way. And that was in if I'm not mistaken, 71. That was 55 years ago. Nevada's changed in 55 years. So I think we need to look at it from that way. I think it's something we can work on. I think it's something we need to work on. And I think that legislatively, I think we can work with the legislature and perhaps rewriting those regulations to meet the dynamic that has changed in Nevada.
And thank you. I mean, I know there was quite a bit in that section 27. I'll reread it again, and I'm sure our chair will be reviewing that when we get to our work session portion of this committee later in the year. But to me, it's, like I said, everybody knows I'm not a big fan of charter schools, but I think they should be represented as well. I think the private schools, you make a good point. And then to the extent that a lot of those charter schools are already in Clark County, some of the private schools, and there's that breakdown there. And you mentioned the stuff about how many student athletes there are, rural versus some of the higher population schools in Clark and in Washoe. So there needs to be that balance, I agree. But it seems to me that if you're saying, hey, we're going to add a charter school deal and 80% of the charter schools are in Clark County, that Clark County is still going to be represented, just from a different perspective or a different set of schools. So I would hope you guys could come up with some type of at least back of the napkin recommendation on how to look at this so we can propose some legislation. And I think the board is too big with basically 25 people voting and non-voting people, and can't be managed properly and meet the objectives. That was all I had, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Daly. And I think I am probably the last to ask a couple questions, and I'm hoping that we can hopefully move this along quickly. So if short answers would be appreciated if possible. One, I was kind of curious because I keep thinking about this change with Clark County School District principals taking out the football from the NIAA, and I keep thinking, is this going to lead to basketballs leaving, other sports leaving? And so my first question is, with respect to like liability insurance at sporting events, is that something that the NIAA covers, or does the schools itself carry their own insurance?
The schools carry their own insurance.
Okay, thank you. That was one question. The other question I had was, and I know that you started this conversation today off by you can't really believe everything you read in the press. And sometimes I know maybe stories get like, it depends who's being interviewed. And so I was curious, as I understood from what I read, it was the principal's decision from Clark County School District to pull the football teams out of the NIAA. Did the NIAA board have any say, like, did they decide to say you guys go away? I'm just trying to figure out where that line is.
The determination to go independent is in the power is within the school.
And so once the schools decided to leave, I'm kind of just curious now. I mean, guess, I mean, we see it as now you're left with the private schools and the charter schools being left. Was this just kind of like a default decision? Was there any like specific contingency plan to like protect the student athletes at the charter schools, the smaller schools, like, or was you kind of just forced with what you had left over?
Tim Jackson, for the record, I'm not sure I understand the ask.
I was just curious, like, if there was any like thought, like with obviously some of our private schools are really tiny, some of our charter schools are really tiny. And so when I think about, in my view, and this is an inherent bias growing up, when Gorman had really strong athletics in the, I was like early 90s, so following the late 80s, and just kind of, and I know how well they are. I mean, their students are recruited around the country when they graduate from high school. And so I know that they are a really good team and you're putting them up against smaller schools. Was that just because this was what was left over, or kind of just, I wanted to understand a better understanding of where we're at today?
So there is a little bit of background that you would need to understand on this one. So if you don't mind, I'll go there. Our schools are divided into 4 classifications: 1A, 2A, 3A, 4A/5A. So 4 and 5, think of them as one. Those are done by enrollment numbers and student population. Smallest are 1A, largest are 4A. The remaining schools in football, minus CCSD in the South, are all 4A enrollment size schools. So they are all the same, not the same enrollment size, but they fall in the same classification. Those schools, those 7 schools, also met together and formulated their schedule, met with us, shared their schedules, and we worked with them in concert. I will tell you, I've been in Nevada since 1994-ish. I've never seen a group of football coaches come together and work together like this group did. They came together, they built the schedule, and they proposed a postseason. Now, also remember, there are schools in the 4A, 5A still remaining in the rest of the state, in the Reno, Washoe area. So there are still those same size schools. There are 3 schools that are classified 5A by our success factor, our rubric. So those 3 are still classified 5A. The 4 other schools would be classified 4A, but the 4A, 5A schools do play a mixed schedule throughout the year. As a matter of fact, some of our 3A schools play 4A schools, and there are a few 2A schools that play 4A schools in football. So the safety factor in football will always remain important, but the thought process behind the schedule wasn't, oh, this is all that's left, let's just put something together. What I said, and what I think the coaches would echo, is the pieces that were left on the board fit, and we put together a new puzzle, and it works. And I'm very proud of those schools for coming together, and I think we've addressed that issue as well. Because while the 36 or 38 schools that were in the Clark County School District that went independent, there were still a predominant number of schools that were not, and they still are on the table.
And thank you for that. And are you hearing any kind of like rumblings if there's going to be any other sport that may want to pull out from the NIAA?
I have not heard anything official, and I will tell you that I've heard the undercurrent of what we did in football, what's stopping us from doing it in everything else. Do I worry about that? Not from a sense that I'm losing sleep, but I don't like the message that sends, and that's just my personal opinion on that. I think the message that we should be sending is what's good for athletics, and I don't believe it's good for athletics. I think athletics teaches us more in loss than victory. We learn to work together, we learn to strive, and we continue to be the #1 dropout prevention program in any school district, period. Our kids graduate, and they still will graduate, whether they're playing independent or not. Well, let's all play together.
Thank you for that. And I look forward to getting kind of that chart to see kind of what we're dealing with the school participation, as also like student athlete numbers. And then I just want to also echo, I appreciate the Raiders. I know the state invested in the Legion Stadium, so it's really nice that you all have that. I look forward, hopefully when that A's Stadium gets done, that solves your baseball needs for that state tournament, whether it's softball or baseball. So hopefully can do that. And hopefully maybe we can find something up north too, so we're just not heavy on the south. So I really appreciate your time coming here and having a robust conversation about a lot of different issues facing NIAA. We may reach out, but I know probably our last hearing will probably be looking at recommendations for proposed legislation. It doesn't stop there. Obviously, we'll have the whole next legislative session to kind of talk about maybe some tweaks that need to be made to a bill, but it sounds like we're probably going to be doing something. So I appreciate you all for being here today. And so with that, I'll go ahead and close our agenda item 4A. I'll give you a moment because our 4B folks are actually down here in Las Vegas as well. And so we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 4B, which is our Nevada Transportation Authority. And our presenters here, we have obviously Director Sanchez from the Department of Business and Industry here with us today, as well as Deputy Commissioner of NTA, Todd Park, and Administrative Attorney of NTA, Mr. Wilborn. But I believe we just have Mr. Park up here. So maybe it will be call a friend if needed. So with that, Mr. Park, if you want to go ahead and make any preliminary remarks, we welcome them. And then I'm sure we'll jump into some questions.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. My name is Todd Park, for the record. I have with me Yonit Wilburn, who is with the with the Nevada Transportation Authority, our administrative attorney, and I have a couple people behind me to phone a friend if I need to. I just wanted to start off my background. I was a police officer for 34 years before I moved to Nevada, and I started in the transportation area. And at that time, I was like most people. I think you wanted to get a ride, you'd go get a taxi or you'd go get a TNC, and you didn't think about anything that was going on behind the scenes and how much it took to get that taxi or a passenger transportation person into that vehicle, because there's so much that goes into it that I didn't realize. The responsibility I felt as a police officer for safety was huge, but I feel that even tenfold now. At any given time, we have 100,000 people or more trying to take commercial transportation around Nevada, and trying to keep people safe is the highest of priorities for both agencies that I'm involved in. It takes so much to do this job, and I think the efficiency that we show, not saying we can't improve, because I think we can, but the efficiency is such a high priority for me. And with that, I did prepare a PowerPoint presentation if we could do that.
And I do know that because I did look at it. So yeah, please feel free to go ahead and do your
And actually, I did one PowerPoint for both agencies. I know our next agenda item is.
And I'm happy to combine those two, because I think that's why both the AT&C and the Taxi Cab Authority were brought before the Sunset Committee. And so I'm happy to combine agenda items 4B and 4C. We don't need you to repeat both.
Okay, thank you. Again, Todd Park, for the record. I'll go ahead and start with just the Nevada Transportation Authority, an overview. We regulate the interstate or point-to-point transportation, which includes the charter buses, limousines, household good movers, storages, tow cars, tour buses, non-emergency medical transfers, employer van pools, airport transport services, special services, warehouse permits, transportation network companies, or TNCs, and more recently, the autonomous vehicles around the state. We also regulate taxi cabs outside of Clark County, and I'll get to that a little bit when I go to the Taxi Cab Authority. Our key functions, we do driver permitting, with the exception of the TNCs. We also process carrier applications. We issue certificates of public convenience and necessity and permits. We oversee the administrative and enforcement hearings. We do audits and inspections of our existing carriers and the enforcement of the Nevada state law by our post-certified police officers that we have within the agency. Our offices are located in both Las Vegas and in Reno. We have a 3-member commission. The commissioners are appointed by the governor. Von Hartung is our chairman. Adam Teddy and Louis Oka are our two commissioners. The agency's funding sources are through TNC assessments, highway funds, permits, fees, and fines. And I did on this slide put our most recent revenue sources if you want to take a look at those. Our division stats, we have about 500 carriers. We have about 600 certificates, and our TNC driver count is about 32,500, and then the non-TNC driver count is about 3,100. Our current governing board, again, the chairman is appointed by the governor. The other two commissioners are appointed by the governor. Not any more than two of them will be from the same political party, and at least one of them, but not more than two, need to be from Clark County. After their initial term, each one will serve a term of 4 years. Each member serves at the pleasure of the governor. The members of the authority shall give their entire time to the business of the authority and shall not pursue any other business or vocation or hold any other office of profit. So in other words, they're full-time employees for us. And that's my presentation on the Nevada Transportation Authority. I'm happy to take any questions if you wish.
You know what? Why don't you go ahead into the taxi cab authority, and then if our questions can overlap, and hopefully you'll be a little flexible.
Okay, thank you. Again, Todd Park for the record. Taxi Cab Authority, we regulate taxi cabs in Clark County. It's a state agency, but we're, by statute, any county that has 700,000 people or more is the agency, the Taxi Cab Authority is the agency that oversees that, and that currently is Clark County. It seems like up north they start getting closer and closer all the time, but they haven't gotten there yet. We also issue driver permits. We fingerprint and do background investigations. We process new license applications, issue the same thing, the CPCN, the Certificate of Public Convenience and Necessity. We also oversee the administrative and enforcement hearings. We have vehicle inspectors. Every single cab in Clark County is inspected at least once a year. And anytime they get into any type of an accident with anything but air, we have to go out and take a look at those cabs to make sure that they're safe to be on the road again. And then also we have an enforcement staff that are also post-certified police officers. Our office is located here in Las Vegas. Our board members are appointed by the governor. Currently, Dan Reeser is our chair. Rusty Graff is our vice chair. J.D. Decker, Lawrence Weekly, and Alex Vasquez are our other members. The agency is a self-funded agency, and the revenues are generated by industry fees, call it the drop fee, which is seated in statute, and then a technology fee, which we just raised this past year, and if I can answer some questions about that if you have that. We have we have exactly 3,530 medallions. There's 16 cab companies. We have about 4,500 cab drivers, and we have about 3,100 cabs that are in service. In 2023, we had 13.8 million rides. Last year, we were at 12.9, so you can see it started to go down a little bit, and I can talk a little bit about that too if you'd like. Our division revenues, I've put those down here as well, if you want to take a look at those. The board consists of the 5 members that are appointed by the governor. The term of each is 3 years, and no member shall serve for more than 6. Not more than 3 may be from the same political party, and no elected officer of the state or any political subdivision is eligible for appointment. Each member is entitled to receive a salary of not more than $80 as fixed by the authority for each day actually employed on the work of the authority. And then while engaged in the business of the Taxi Cab Authority, each member and the employee of the authority is entitled to receive a per diem allowance. One of our members, our chair, does live up in the North Country, and he travels down for our meetings, so he also gets travel expenses. And then the taxi cab authority needs to maintain their principal office in the county of where the area of the state where it performs most of its regulation. Like I said, right now it's Clark County. And then the last slide I wanted to show is this is not a new topic for these two agencies. These two agencies have been talked about in the Sunset Committee several times. I just highlighted that the NTA in the 2015-2016 interim, it was recommended to terminate and consolidate the functions of the NTA with the taxi cab authority in a new executive division. And then in November of 2016, they considered it, but it was omitted. And that was for both agencies. That was for the NTA and for the taxi cab authority. And then personally, in March of 2023, I sat in front of this subcommittee and sunsetting was discussed at that time. And at that time, it was decided to take a look at modernization instead of sunsetting. So with that, I hope I was able to give a little insight into our agencies, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentations, and I'll go ahead and open it up to our members. Do any of our members have questions for Mr. Park? We'll go ahead and start this time on my left with Assemblymember Roth.
Thank you. My question, you said that you oversee autonomous vehicles. I'm wondering if what data is being tracked on that, and if we know as a state how many accidents or anything like that is a result of using these autonomous vehicles. I'm from the north. We don't have a lot. I don't actually know what is being used down here, if there's like Waymo or it's the Tesla Loop or whatever it is, or if it's other industries, but I'm wondering if we know that kind of data.
Very good question. Again, Todd Park for the record. We do regulate the autonomous vehicles. That is, it's becoming more and more prevalent. There's quite a process for autonomous vehicles to come into the state and work in our state. They originally start with DMV. They go through a process there, and then they have to come to our agency. Once they want to start charging money, they come and get a CPCN from our agency, and then we start to regulate them. Right now, Zoox is the only company that is close, I think, to being charging on their app. As far as the safety, we do track those. I don't have those numbers in front of me. We would be happy to provide that for you, but we do track the safety of the autonomous vehicles for sure.
I have a follow-up, Chair. So just to clarify, so there are companies currently operating in the state that are fully autonomous vehicles.
Todd Park for the record, yes. Zoox right now is out, doesn't even have a steering wheel in it. It looks, it's quite an interesting looking vehicle that you'll see running around. But yes, it's fully autonomous. They have not started charging yet, but I understand that's coming soon.
Okay. And then with the chair's permission, I would love to, if we could get that data just on the safety, if there's been any accidents and stuff like that.
Administrative Attorney Yonit Wilburn for the record. I'm the administrative attorney for the Nevada Transportation Authority, not the Taxi Cab Authority, just so I'm more clear. So the regulations with regards to both TNCs and autonomous vehicles are pretty clearly defined in both statute and regulation. They, with regards to both, and talking to autonomous vehicles, there is confidentiality written into our statutes, and the crash reports and trip data and all of that for both TNCs and AVNCs are confidential. We cannot share that. That doesn't mean you can't specifically ask the company themselves, but written specifically, and it is very specific in our statutes, that the information they provide us with regards to crash data and trip data and internal data is only for staff of the authority, which is the Nevada Transportation Authority, and we are not allowed to share it. And that's written for the autonomous vehicles. That is NRS 706B as in boy and NAC 706B as in boy. I apologize for having my phone up here, but that's how I'm looking up the statutes, and I will get you that exact statute. And I'll read that into the record if you give me just a minute. So if you would like to move on to another question.
and you can, I think, follow up with the committee, I'm sure.
And I can follow up with the committee and get you those exact statutes.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And I would just want to echo that if it's possible, because I know sometimes there's a level of confidentiality with like obviously specific data, but sometimes we can like broadly get data that would say of all of like the autonomous vehicles, there's been like 2 incidents per year. If that's acceptable, great. If not, we'll just take a look at that statute. I'm going to go up to Carson City to Senator Daley and then probably come back down to Las Vegas for some questions. So Senator Daley, we're kicking it up to you for a few questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I think mine are pretty straightforward. So just looking at the one slide you showed where the Sunset Committee had made a recommendation, I think in the 2015-16 interim. And I think the recommendation was to create a new executive division at that time. Do you call on what the issue was and why it didn't get through from a recommendation to the Legislative Commission? Was somebody opposed? Because apparently, like this time, both agencies are in agreement that consolidation would be in order. The good news is that the Sunset Committee is no longer a subcommittee to Legislative Commission, so we can move forward if we pass something out of this board or interim committee. Can you shed a little light on that? Was the problem over a new executive division and or something else?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Todd Park for the record. I think that consolidation of the 2 agencies has been talked about for many, many years. I've been here since 2017. Like I stated, I have been in front of this committee before talking about Sunset. There is a lot of movement towards the consolidation of the 2 agencies right now. Why things haven't happened in the past, I really can't speak to that. I wasn't here and I was not involved in those sessions, but I think that there is an appetite for it. I think that there's portions of the industry and maybe even more than what I'm aware of right now that are interested in seeing a consolidation of the 2 agencies. And going back to my initial statements, where we talk about efficiency and safety, I think it's imperative that we move in that direction. And I think that this is a big step towards doing that.
And thank you. And it's not really all, I guess, that important if on what happened before. It just sometimes you can learn from it. And then our committee has changed, so we don't have to go back to the Legislative Commission. We have recommendations we can make from here, so that's a change. So a couple of questions along those lines, and I don't know why there was a recommendation before for a new executive division, which to me seems unnecessary and creates an extra burden and step. If you have an existing transportation authority, Nevada Transportation Authority, which oversees taxi cabs everywhere in the state except for Clark County, apparently, that you wouldn't just make that transition into the existing scheme under the Transportation Authority. So a couple of questions there is the mechanisms that both entities use for licensing, for vetting, for collecting the fees, enforcement, and I know you talked a little bit about hearing boards and stuff. Is most of that parallel anyway or already being done under the Nevada Transportation Authority so it can be easily transferred over?
Very good question. Again, Todd Park for the record. There are so many parallels between the 2 agencies. There's differences as well, such as taxi cabs up in Washoe County. They can have 6 passengers minus the driver. In Clark County, they can have 6 drivers. That doesn't include the driver, so you can have 7 passengers. The the medallions in Clark County are not the way things are regulated up in Washoe County. Obviously, the revenue sources are different. So there are differences, but I think across the board, overall, both agencies are really doing a lot of the same type of regulation, and I think it would be a fairly easy transition. It's just going to take some rolling up of the sleeves and digging in and getting that done.
Understood. So a lot of the things you just mentioned about passengers and that kind of stuff, is that in regulation or is it actually in statute?
It's Todd Park for the record. It's actually in statute.
Okay. So if we were making changes to statute to merge it in, we'd have to reconcile those differences and then probably have a clause in any piece of legislation that says, now you got to go back and make your regulations to conform to what the new statute is. So second question or just thinking ahead if this is going to happen. So you have the existing Nevada Transportation Authority, so nothing would really change there except you would take on additional duties. The Taxi Cab Authority, duties, powers, resources, everything would transfer over. So does the Taxi Cab Authority currently have any debt structure, any outstanding bonds or anything like that that would be impacted by a change that would take some time to transition? Or is there no debt and it's just a matter of consolidating an account? Oversimplified, but.
If we can make it simple, I would really like to. Todd Park for the record. Right now, the Taxi Cab Authority is sustainable. The legislature last session was able to expand our technology fee in the way that we could use it. The Taxi Cab Authority board back in, I believe it was February of this year, raised the tech fee, which really helped the agency because it was financially, it was in some pretty tough shape. But because of that technology fee increase, we are sustainable now. I guess I worry that one big event, another COVID or something like that, would just really hurt the agency again. But we are definitely looking at the revenue streams and how we can combine those along with the Nevada Transportation Authority budget so we can try to make that as smooth a transition as we can.
So you don't have any outstanding debt or anything like that, or no bonds have been issued that would be impacted by the interruption of the revenue stream from one agency to the next?
Todd Park for the record, we do not.
Okay, well that makes it simpler, just FYI. Thank you. That was all, Madam Chair.
We'll come back down here. I will go to Senator Rogich.
Thank you for being here. If the goal is to consolidate, and so what I'm looking at is there a transition plan that we can review that reflects the cost savings and perhaps protects the Clark County taxi specific oversight, enforcement, hearings, and existing reserves and fee revenues, and things along that nature? Do you have that at this point? Or?
Todd Park for the record. We are in the process of developing all of that. Policy papers are being written. The budgets are being examined. It has been a heavy lift, and it's something that we've been working on. I don't think that I have a final version to share with you yet, but we are working on that, and I think we would be happy to share that when we can.
Okay, thank you.
I'll go to Assemblymember Haven.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you guys for being here today. Lots of really good questions. The one question that I have is, how could we as the legislative body make your life easier and the the individuals that are under you, the taxi cabs, et cetera, are there rules and regulations that we could modify to help streamline things? Maybe that'll be in the policy paper you guys are going to bring forward soon. But one thing that I noticed in traveling is, I could go on the Lyft and Uber app in other states, and I can actually get a taxi cab right then and there and choose, either Uber or XL or whatever the other options are. And then there was a taxi cab, and I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. We don't have that in Nevada. Why is that? So, is that something that you guys are looking at trying to bring forward to us to change? Or are there other regulations or statute changes that are needed to kind of modernize and streamline both the Taxi Cab Authority and the NTA?
Todd Park for the record. Thank you for that. We are actually in a pilot program where we are using the Uber app, and you can get a taxi on the Uber app under XL. And there are definitely regulations, and we've done workshops at the Taxi Cab Authority to try to bolster that process. I also believe that we want to take a look at it statutorily in this next legislative session to be able to seat that a little bit better than just through regulation. And the program is working. It's working well. I think every single taxi cab company in Clark County now is on that program, in the pilot program. So we're monitoring it, and I would just say that it's working well.
And then just quick follow-up. I went on the Uber app, tried to figure that out. So you have to go under XL, and then there's an option under that for the taxi cabs? It's not, it's because I'll just give the example. I was in Washington, D.C., and it was just like Uber XL and then taxi cab, and I could just click taxi cab. So I didn't see it on the app. I'm not saying it's not there. It just was really hard to see. So for me, I just want to help streamline things and make it more efficient for you and the members and the individuals, because I did see the loss of revenue, and I think that it's a trend based on advances in technology and just not keeping up. So I appreciate it.
Next, we'll go to Assemblymember Orlichter.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I'm glad to see there is support for consolidation. So my question is, as long as we're thinking of consolidating, are there services that could easily fit within the Transportation Authority besides taxi cab that we could also think about bringing in? And one in particular, as I was looking down on slide 2, the list of different kinds of transportation you regulate, charter buses, limos, etc. I didn't see delivery services. Is that under special services, or what about the DoorDash that comes from my local restaurant to my house? What about the Amazon driver that comes from the local warehouse to my house? Are they in here under special services or some other category? And so anyway, that's what I'm curious about.
Thank you for the question. Todd Park for the record. That is not under our purview. We do not regulate those. The property that we do regulate are through tow trucks and household good movers, and then everything else is passenger transportation. But the Uber Eats and things like that, we do not regulate that.
So are they unregulated? And again, if not, should you be regulating them? Or if they're being regulated somewhere else, is that a good idea to have it somewhere else? Is this something we need to look at?
Administrative Attorney Yonit Wilburn. So for example, you brought up Amazon delivery. So that we regulate passenger and property transportation, meaning that the public can go out and hire these people. So me as a member of the public, or all of you as a member of the public, can go out and hire a household good mover, or can go out and hire someone to take you if you don't want to drive your own car. Amazon delivery, I can't go out and hire the Amazon delivery. So I don't think it would be a good idea to seat those services under the Nevada Transportation Authority, because we are very much passenger and property transportation. So it would mix in and it wouldn't align with our agency's goals. Now, I can't speak to it, but just as a general business perspective, the Amazon delivery it's part of the business. So Amazon owns the cars that are delivering it. So they are insuring them and they are doing that. And no one else, and the drivers are Amazon employees. So that like I said, we are strictly passenger and property transportation, meaning the public has access to these services, where the other ones that you are asking about, the public doesn't necessarily have access to those services in the sense of getting into the car, or you're taking my stuff. Stuff is being brought to you. So it's very different. And I don't think that our statutes and regulations are seated to regulate any of those.
Okay, so I understand the distinction with Amazon, but getting back to DoorDash, and sometimes I get it through Uber, but if I don't, are you not getting the DoorDash driver that I hire?
Again, the driver is through the company, and I myself am not getting into the car. They are delivering their product to the consumer. The consumer themselves is not trying to use the transportation to get somewhere or to take something that's personally mine. And that's, for example, household good movers or tow cars. You are taking property that is actually a consumer's and you're taking it. So that is where the distinction is. With a DoorDash and Uber, you're delivering a product of a company to a person, versus everything we regulate is the individual themselves is contracting to use these transportation services. I hope I've been clear. If not, I can try and be clearer.
Okay, I understand the line you're drawing, but in terms of me as a consumer, I'm not sure functionally it matters whether I don't own the good till. To me, once I've paid for that meal, it's mine. They charge me before it gets there. So it seems like an artificial distinction. And, you know, if they're not being regulated, that seems like could be a problem if it's just out there without us thinking about it.
Next, I will go to Senator Ling.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on your pilot program that you were talking about. One of the things that Uber does is teen accounts, so that if you can't go pick up your child from school, they can do a teen account. I'm wondering if that's something the Taxi Cab Authority could put in that pilot program, that parents could set up teen accounts. People that have those accounts, that are the drivers, go through a more intense background checks and stuff. And is that something that you would look at?
Todd Park for the record. Thank you for that question. I know that several of the cab companies are taking a look at those types of programs that are prevalent from around the country. I'm aware that there's these types of programs in other jurisdictions. We do not have that here right now, but I'm certainly open to looking at a pilot program on something like that.
I've actually used that with my teen, and my grandson lives with us, and it actually works very well. And the app communicates with the parent or the guardian as to, I can follow the whole route and see everything that's happening. So I feel more comfortable and safe about that, because it's always kind of scary to put your child in a car with a person you don't know. But I think it's worth looking at, especially in a city like ours where it's a 24-hour city and there's so much going on and parents are working different hours and stuff.
Thank you. And then I have a couple questions for you all. One, just in response to my colleagues' questions, like inquiring about DoorDash and stuff, I've been reading that Uber is starting like point-to-point transportation. So I, as a Uber person, can put a good into an Uber vehicle that could be then transported across town. Would that fall under the NTAs through the NTC's like oversight?
Administrative Attorney Yonit Wilburn for the record. I have not heard of that service yet, and that is something I would need to look into, because household good movers are very much codified and written into our statutes and regulations. I don't know that that would fall under a household good mover because it's very specific. You have to move a household good. So I don't know that that would necessarily fall under it because I understand while it is my property and I'm transporting it, it's not necessarily something that you would find in my house. For example, if you need Uber to, if you're an attorney, if I need to get files over to another attorney's office, if I can put it in a locked compartment in an Uber and get it over there. So that would be something that at this point in time, I do not believe we would regulate. And if it was something that the legislator or industry was looking at, I would believe there would probably need to be more regulations and statutes seeded into our chapter in order to regulate things along those lines.
Thank you for that, because I'm sure when I think about when I've read it in the context is how it could be used to probably move like illicit goods. And that's what I was kind of concerned about when I read about this point-to-point transportation. The other thing I have a question for, and Mr. Park, obviously, as like a former police officer, I think you'll be well equipped to talk about this. One of the things that we hear about, and I think this is why the NTC and the Tax Cap Authority primarily were brought before sunset, was because of the financial issues that we discussed during the regular session in our money committees. And one of those that we always hear about is those like operating illegally in this space. And so I kind of wanted to hear from you, if these two were combined, would that create a situation where we'd have like more of a robust situation for investigators to kind of crack down on those that aren't licensed, that are operating outside of either?
Todd Park for the record. Thank you for that question. That is something that's forefront in all of our minds, is the illegal transportation that's going on. People do not understand the pitfalls to getting into an unlicensed, unvetted vehicle and the dangers that are associated with that. I have a small staff in both agencies. Combining those are going to make that better. I still feel like we're understaffed for that. We do the very best we can. I know that illegal transportation is something that is discussed with me on, if not a weekly basis, a daily basis from the industry. Obviously, the illegal transporters are taking money out of the certificated carriers' pockets. But more importantly, just the safety aspect of, if you get into an accident and you are in an illegal transporting vehicle, the insurance isn't going to take care of what it needs to take care of. And so trying to protect the consumer is so important. And I think just the combination of putting the two agencies together would definitely help that. But I also think that we need to do even more.
Thank you for that. And then I know we received a really cool chart of a proposed combined NTA org summary. And looking at that, I kind of had two questions. One was, is this kind of like a fold in from both sides, from the Taxi Cab Authority as well as NTA? I wanted to make sure. I was curious if it was representative.
Todd Park for the record. Yes, that is not with any major enhancements. That is just basically, I use the word squish. That's just kind of us squishing them together.
That's a great terminology. So you were being very inclusive of both. With this, I noticed one of the recommendations, because I've kind of heard the sides from both sides. You know, one likes the appointed commissioners that aren't full-time employees. Others really do like the 3 full-time employee oversight. And I saw the combined was a recommendation of 5 part-time. But just kind of working with our state's budget, I know sometimes it's really hard to fill those part-time positions. So is there any like thought or consideration about maybe making like a couple of those positions full-time, just a little more flexibility with that?
Todd Park for the record. You bring up some very good points. I've been considering a lot of those. I know Director Sanchez and I have had discussions about this. There's several issues here. One, with the Nevada Transportation Authority, the 3 full-time commissioners right now, sometimes quorum is an issue. And so we need to go to more members than just 3. But as a full-time employee, that costs money. That costs a lot of money. And so I think the thought is having a 5-member board that is paid more than the $80 that the statute calls for. We've looked at models from other state agencies of other boards where gaming control, for instance, they have a pay scale that is more attractive, I think, than $80 a month plus your per diem and a travel budget.
Thank you for that. And it's also still an appointment to serve on these wonderful boards and commissions. So that was my last question. I'm going to kind of look to other folks to make sure anyone had any other further questions for you all. I don't see it. Was there anything we asked that you may want to add, in like any concluding remarks?
Todd Park for the record. I would just say thank you for the opportunity to allow me to talk with you about both agencies. I think it's been a unique situation having me run both agencies. I also have a chief of enforcement that is running both agencies. Having worked at the Nevada Transportation Authority and then going to the Taxi Cab Authority and now running both, I've gotten a perspective that a lot of people probably have not been able to see. And I just appreciate you guys taking the time to take a look at this again, because it is such a hot topic, has been for so many years. And I just think it's something definitely that needs to have a good examination on.
Thank you for that. And we thank you for handling both of those today as a combined agenda item. And so with that, I'm happy to close agenda items 4B and C, and we can go ahead and move on to our last agenda item 5, which is public comment. I don't believe I see anyone here in Las Vegas that wishes to give public comment at the end of our meeting. So I'll go up to Carson City. I'm not sure if anyone joined us from Carson City. I don't see anyone. So with that, last but not least, we will go to AVH. AVH, is there anyone on the phone line wishing to give public comment today?
Thank you, Chair. Our public lines are open and working. However, there are no callers at this time.
Thank you. And I can go to our very last agenda item, which is to close our meeting. So thank you everyone for your participation this morning.